very distinguished colleagues. My name is Leo Barakuma Degi Eremiayo. I represent Bayelsa East Senatorial District. Mr. President, I thank you so much. Mr. President, the story of Oloibiri is a known story to all of us. It's the story of our nation, the story of the genesis of oil production on the basis of our socio-economic development after independence. So, Mr. President, I thank you for the opportunity, and may I move the motion right away. This motion is supported and co-sponsored by about 28 senators, including my neighbor behind me, today is not here, Senator Yakubu Useni, and I so move. Note that the first oil well in Nigeria was discovered in commercial quantity in Oloibiri, in present-day Bayelsa State, by Shell Petroleum Development Company on 15 January 1956, with a production capacity of 5,100 barrels per day. Also note that export of crude oil from the Oloibiri field started in 1958, and shortly after, crude oil became the mainstay of the economy. Consequently, changing Nigeria's oil history having launched the country into the elite club of oil producers, astronomically increased our foreign exchange earnings. Further note that about 63 years after discovery, exploitation and production of crude oil, the Oloibiri oil field and surrounding host communities had suffered neglect and environmental degradation. Land, water, and air was constantly polluted due to the activities of the oil companies. The inhabitants of the area had suffered, and some even died from epidemics and terminal diseases due to oil spills and flaring of natural gas, in addition to damage of their source of livelihood. Concerned that today, Oloibiri oil field, which is the first oil well in West Africa, is now dried after several decades of production. Sadly, the field is covered with rust, weeds, and marked with weather-beaten signboard with inscription, Oloibiri Well 1. Observes that in other climes where crude oil was first found, notably the Little Titusville in Pennsylvania, United States of America, Manama, Bahrain in Asia, government develops heritage institutions such as oil museum and research centers, industrial parks, and what have you. Recalls that in recognition of the importance of the first oil field and the need to develop the great foreign exchange earnings, tourism potentials of the area and the nation, as well as improve the standard of living of the inhabitants of the communities, the idea to build a national world-class museum of oil and gas was conceptualized, designed, and foundation stone equally laid by President Shehu Shagari in 1983. The progress of the project was, however, halted no sooner than it commenced. Disturbed that, in the same vein, another foundation stone of the museum was laid by former President Olusegun Obasanjo in 2001, but still the area is sad commentary of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. It shows no trace that it was the place where oil was first drilled and exploited. Disturbed further that much later, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) presented an act to establish the National Oil and Gas Museum and Research Center in Oloibiri and recommended the construction of the museum and research center with clear budgetary allocation from the federal government under the control and management of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. Again, no progress was made, being a clear case of neglect and abandonment. Worried that though the federal government removed the project from National Commission for Museums and Monuments and domiciled it with the Petroleum Technology Development Fund in 2011, the project still remains moribund, and further worried that the contract for the construction of the Oil and Gas Research Center and Museum, as re-awarded by PTDF, valued at about 35 billion naira, is yet to commence, leaving the inhabitants of the host communities with the negative memories of oil exploration and production. Accordingly, resolves to 1. Commend the federal government for the conceptualization, design, and award of contract for the establishment of the National Oil and Gas Research Center and Museum in Oloibiri, the first oil field in Nigeria, to promote tourism and improve the socio-economic well-being of the people. 2. Urge the federal government to give priority attention to the development of heritage institutions such as the Oloibiri Oil and Gas Research Center and Museum as a constant reminder and enrichment of the history of our socio-economic development. 3. Urge the federal government to direct PTDF and the concerned contractors to mobilize to sites, commence the immediate construction of the Oil and Gas Research Center and Museum at Oloibiri. And 4. Direct relevant Senate committees to carry out intensive oversight on the implementation of this project. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I so move.
There is really the need to ensure immediate commencement of the Oil and Gas Research Center and Museum at Oloibiri in Bayelsa State. Mr. President, from the body of the motion, when oil was discovered in Oloibiri and then commercial quantity extracted in 1958, and I was told after about 20 years of production, the oil well got dried, by which time Nigerians have extracted over 22 million barrels of oil in that place. And when it started, Oloibiri gave hope to Nigerians, because that was the first port, the first oil well that came out with a commercial quantity and contributed to our revenue earning and also national development. Mr. President, the story of Oloibiri is actually a story of negligence by a people who benefited from a system, and then when the system gets older, abandon it completely. I can liken it to a story, Mr. President, of a man who has no child. So he trained the brother children and brought them up. They all become graduates. Now the man is stricken with old age. No maintenance, no care, no person asks about his welfare again. That is like the story of Oloibiri. The country extracted the gold deposit, the black gold, from the place for over 20 years.
For the first time.
for the first time, and they made all the wealth. From that one, we were able to get more money and develop more oil wells. Today, Oloibiri is stricken with old age. So it has been abandoned because it's been stricken with old age. Otobagi, Otuogidi.
Distinguished Sakibo, we have only 9 more minutes to go because we have to go to the. I think you need to.
I've given tell my moonlight. So I'm summarizing.
It's a very pathetic one.
Mr. President, because Oloibiri issue is very pathetic. I'm sorry, but I'll just make one more minute. Otobagi and Otuodiki, they are also joint communities with Oloibiri.
Yes.
Mr. President, if you go to these areas, even you, as I know you, as emotional as you are, you will shed tears. General Gowon went there and shed tears. Many great men have gone there and said they have disappointed Nigeria. That is, Nigerians themselves have disappointed Nigeria. If somebody takes care of you, and then in later days, you don't think about the person again. Mr. President, the worst part of it is this. There are still hydrocarbon deposits in the wells that need to be removed. Those hydrocarbon deposits are still causing more pollution after this long period. So I second the motion and agree with all the prayers, but I want to say that as a matter of fact, let the nation work hard. Not just the museum and the research center, but also work hard to go and remedy the place so that the inhabitants of the place who are lamenting every day can at least forget about their past. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator.
I'm pleased and honored to join my colleagues, His Excellency Senator Degi Eremeu, by supporting this motion. Mr. President, the motion is very clear and its prayers are clear. And it is just a little bit similar to what we considered last about negligence of what has happened in the past. It's clear in the sense that what it's asking for has already been started in terms of the establishment of a museum and research center. But what is lacking is the commitment to finalize what has been started. Mr. President, with the privilege one has had to visit many countries, there are several countries in the world that earn revenue from tourism. In Africa, a country like Egypt is a very good example. And even South Africa. I've been privileged to go to South Africa and be able to visit the first gold well and what they have done in that place and the kind of resources that they are generating from it. So therefore, Mr. President, because of time, I like to support this motion because it has both economic, social, and technological advantages. Economic because if the research center and the museum is established, Nigeria will be able to generate resources. And our history, from history, the generations yet unborn will learn quite a lot. And from research, it is possible because when oil is found, Oloibiri is what we are talking about. There are several other oil wells now that will dry up in future. What are the consequences of this to human survival? What happened after oil has been drained in a land? What happens to that land? What happened to the people? Are there health? Are there other consequences to them? The research will be able to bring that out. And by doing that, we'll be able to prevent any further consequences to the health of the people. So therefore, Mr. President, I wish to support the motion and I urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you very much. I can see them.
I am Senator Engineer Kabir Barkia, Captain Central. Mr. President, let me commend the presenter of this very, very important motion. Of course, everybody knows the importance of research and also the museum. Mr. President, it is through research that, of course, we are what we are today in this country. It is through research that, of course, we can move forward. It is through research that, of course, a country can be developed. Therefore, this is a very, very important issue. And, Mr. President, through this research, we can know the level of our oil. God forbid, so that, of course, we know where we are, so that we cannot wake up one day and then we find our oil dried completely. So when we build this center, definitely we are promoting the research so that, yes, definitely we know where we are and of course we will not be taken by surprise. And also, Mr. President, museum issue. Definitely everybody knows history is very, very important. And it's only through the museum that, yes, we can know where we started, where we came from, and where we are and where we are going. So I definitely rise to support this motion and also look at the press and see the implementation. Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues.
Distinguished Senator Christopher Ekpeyon.
Colleagues, thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity of speaking on this motion after my return from the burial of my dear wife, which you graciously supported me. God bless you for the letter you read. Mr. Senate President and my colleagues, I'm speaking from the position of strength. Strength in the sense that I have been to Oloibiri, and I knew Oloibiri when I was just age 16. If Oloibiri was to be cited in any of our areas here, we have 109 senators here. If Oloibiri was to belong to any of us and suffer the kind of devastation that they have suffered over centuries and decades, Mr. Senate President, I don't think we would have delayed the passage of this motion. The request of this motion is not too much for Nigeria, for any government of Nigeria. If the former presidents like President Shehu Shagari could thought it wise to lay a foundation for the establishment of a museum to record that this is the first place that gave us a touch and resources to propel Nigerian economy outside agriculture, outside groundnut pyramid, outside palm oil that was found and utilized in the east, outside cocoa that is being generated in the west. Sir, I don't think anything is too much. I want to
allow Senator Stella Odua, please.
Request, as illustrated on this motion, Mr. President, is not far-fetched. That Oloibiri remain the centerpiece of our economic development. And so it will also add value if we want to define in this new dispensation that our president says Nigeria is going to the next level. The next level, if we are requesting that Oloibiri should be turned into a museum, should be turned into a tourist attraction area, I don't think it will be something too much for Nigeria to accommodate. So I want to plead with my colleagues and Mr. President of the Senate that I stand, and because I am also a co-mover of this motion, I want to plead that this motion should be accepted and adopted and implemented.
Accordingly, resolves to commend the federal government for the conceptualization, design, and award of contract for the establishment of the Oil and Gas Research Center and Museum in Oloibiri, the first oil field in Nigeria, to promote tourism and improve the socio-economic well-being of the people. Those in favor of this prayer, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2. Urge the federal government to give priority attention to the development of heritage institutions such as the Oloibiri Oil and Gas Research Center and Museum as a constant reminder and enrichment of the history of our socio-economic development. Those in favor of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3. Urge the federal government to direct PTDF and the concerned contractors to mobilize to site, commence the immediate construction of the Oil and Gas Research Center and Museum at Oloibiri. Those in favor of prayer 3 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. And prayer 4, direct relevant Senate committees to carry out intensive oversight on the implementation of this project. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.